It just looks like a massive job killer. Why would I adopt this thing that's promising bottom lines and efficiencies when that bottom line might be me?
This one's for the disruptors, the uncommon, the unconventional, the rebels. You're not here to take things lying down. Well, season 2 is about shaking things up. I'm Beatrice, and this is the Art of Branding podcast. Be ready, be badass. Let's shake some shit up. Oh, we're gonna have some fun today with today's guest who's been scaling B2B marketing for the funsies and mutually dedicated to deleting the boring in the B2B world. Heck yeah. James here has helped 3 SaaS companies 4x and 2 exit. And that wasn't even enough. He's built a 6-figure marketing agency bootstrap. Okay, hands up. I am so excited to dive in today. So, your first line in your LinkedIn About section has got me curious. It's all about shaking things up, and you know that's what we're here about.
Yeah.
So, what got you into that?
I stumbled upon what we're doing at Digital because I was trying to solve a problem that I saw as a pattern in the SaaS companies that I'd worked with, right? You had this board of directors or board of whoever, right? Largely in charge of, helping us decide how we invest in our growth programs. And then you had senior leadership, which was, they were supposed to be the adopters, right? Of what should this economy look like in the next 5 years? And then there's this gap, right, of the practitioners who kind of see, right, what's going on, right? We know what we're clicking on. At that time, millennials were kind of becoming more into the leadership role. Gen Z was coming into the marketplace in a bunch of different ways. From the youngest Gen Z, they all had their cell phones and they're blowing up on Discord, to millennials who kind of, we traverse social media like nobody else. And then all these platforms sort of exploded, but this gap at the top, right, especially in B2B, right, they had no idea that this was the way of the future. So they had sort of their old methodologies, and I would be this person who's like running back and forth between the two, trying to sell the new methodology, and then eventually getting to the spot where I would be able to build this internally within those organizations. And I got to a point where I was like, hey, look, I've done it a few times. I know how to do it. And AI came out and it made it super simple to scale. So now we're here today, having fun with it.
Damn. So it's like the way that it's always been that you're facing.
Yes.
I can just imagine there'd be so many challenges there with that, right? Like, what were some of the biggest that you faced? And I mean, probably even now, right? Like, there's still a lot that are like trying to not quite integrate that concept.
Yes. The biggest challenge is helping them understand that their investment is safe, right? With software companies, they often not many of them start bootstrap. It's one of the reasons why I did. They start with this heavy pressure and mandate for how they should use their money, because that's what they said in the funding rounds, right? They said, we're going to use it for this specific thing, and therefore they have to execute against that mandate. Unfortunately, when you get someone coming in, they're extremely revolutionary or innovative, that stuff's not in the mandate, right? So now you have to do this case building process of start small, prove your case, and then you can scale after doing, 18 rounds of presentations and explanations. And finally someone caves and they're like, okay, man, just do it. And they close their eyes. Luckily for me, I had some really good leadership behind me. Just like, you know what, James, I'm going to trust you on this, and I'm going to open my eyes in 4 months, and hopefully it's exactly as you said it would be. And I want to say I was pretty blessed in that case where I had leadership that trusted me. And then I was able to get the result with a really solid team around me.
So would you say for others who are like also out there trying to do something like a little bit outside of that, like the norm, this is how it's always been done.
Yeah.
That they just need to keep on like working with businesses and have that, okay, we've done this, or any other ideas or approaches?
That's a very good question. It's sort of a hindsight question where I look back and reflect on what I look like.
Mhm.
And I was like a headless chicken. So I don't know if that's the way you should go about it now, but it was enough to make the leadership around me question what they already believed, because that's the battle, right? They have these deep seated beliefs about how to get things done. They've seen proof from their end, but transformation is very slow in the economy, especially with software. Even though you think it's very fast, it's still sort of slow, right? You still need the end user to adopt this new thing. I proved that one thing. For the CEO of the software company, his buy-in came from an A/B test, an email A/B test. He put his email right inside one of our lists, one of our segmented lists, because he always wants to monitor and see what kind of marketing communication you're doing. And I had tested the terminology that they'd been using for about 7 years versus something that I spotted in the SEO data. And immediately after launching this program or this campaign, I got an email saying, "Why are we using this language instead of this language?" And then, within seconds, I was able to point to this campaign that showed like almost double the open rates and engagement rates when we used this term versus that term. And from then on, he was like off of my back, and he was like, "Let this dude do what he's doing. We've never had better email marketing." And then I just kept experimenting and experimenting. And I guess I got lucky with that one because it was immediate, but you kind of have to be able to test and prove some of your theories.
And really understanding the language of your target audience at the end of the day, right? Like, it wouldn't have worked if you didn't know that, hey, look, and done that research, right? Because a lot of people are just like testing out a lot of different things, and that's great. But before that, like, having that research done of understanding,
Yes.
okay, so this language would work with this, and even to your specific target market, right? Like understanding that that specific example would resonate. This is the before, this is what you're doing at the moment.
Yes.
And by changing this one thing, like really focusing on that one pain.
You do have to recognize what your stakeholders believe and also make it real. Like, they do have a reason to believe what they believe. So don't just go in and say, "Hey, you're wrong. Change what you're doing." You just go, "You know what? You might be right. Here's my theory, and here's how we test our theories."
Because you're focused on, the early buyers, right? How have you found positioning against other businesses that are also similarly positioned as well in the market, like being able to differentiate from them and stand out?
So for Digital, it's kind of an ongoing thing. We help B2B companies scale content automation, and we do that by leveraging very proprietary, detailed research on the ICP. And I got that from my experience in SaaS, recognizing that buying cycles were not driven by organizations, they were driven by individual people with individual goals. And generally, there's three main personalities associated with the buying process. You've got like your lower level analyst, practitioner. This is a person that's going to be using the tool probably. And then you've got this middle person, which is sort of your director, your manager. They're going to be managing the workflows and the tech stack. All they care about specifically is making sure they don't interrupt what they're doing right now that works, and whatever they do in the future works very well, right? You don't want to rock the boat with this person. Then you've got your executive buyer who's never going to touch this software, but is responsible for all of the decision making on where you spend software money, right? So think of this parabolic curve of 80-20, right? This executive buyer over here is responsible for 80% of the decision, but he's going to be in this technology less than 20%. And then you've got this practitioner who's responsible for less than 20% of the decision, and is going to be using this product 80% of their time. So I recognized that, okay, within those three personas, deal champions can come from anywhere, right? And if you focus all of your time, which is what most B2B companies do, specifically the cybersecurity company that I was talking about, they would focus all of their time on this executive buyer. And then by the time this company got through the sales cycle, we had, issues with or utilization and adoption, right? So you had some retention things that we had to address. But once we flipped the switch, recognizing who is engaging with content. So again, going back to the data, going back to what users were searching on SEO, how they were perusing our blog. You need a lot of personalization tools. Luckily, we had HubSpot, which is kind of a big deal here because it taught me a lot about what we believe, especially for digital. And it just showed me like, this is the user journey. This is how they consume. This is what this personality wants. And all three of them want something different. So if you go to market with, hey, we're going to help you with bottom lines and efficiencies, you've just made the entire process boring. They're not going to look at this piece of content. And if you look at LinkedIn, like that's the content that gets ignored, right? People want to see specific stories, things that help their individual careers out, right? So once we made that switch to, hey, practitioner, here's how this tool is going to help your career. And then, hey, EB, here's how this tool is going to help your career. And then, hey, workflow manager or director, here's how this tool is going to help your career. We just saw this skyrocket in our sales pipeline. There was aggressive growth there. And the only problem we had then was now building the tool around, building the software to respond to it, right? So it's like the only challenge of like promising the moon, and then eventually you got there. But that was the case. And then if you look at the data now, majority of the market, they're online 6 hours a day, cross-platform. You don't know where they are. You don't know what kind of content they're consuming, but most of it is education and entertainment, right? So it has to be extremely relevant. Now it's super personalized. So selecting an audience is extremely important. So for Vigil, it was harder. We have this sort of plug and play. It's a productized service. So essentially any company can just adopt, our automated workflow to, build an entire content calendar for a particular audience. Our next step, Beatrice, is deciding on industry. We're going to work with the automotive industry, or we're going to work with, software, trucking software companies, right? That's the scary part because that's what's required now. If you want to have reach, impression, engagement, visibility across any platform.
So it's been super clear. It's like, hey, look, really focusing on the human side, and B, doubling down on, hey, we got to make sure that this research is in, and we know, like, okay, where our target audience is at, be it, even if it goes beyond like demographically, like where maybe it's the psychology part that
yes.
Really stands out, and like where they're at in their mindset or where they're at in their business, what is that current thing that they're focusing on. And that is what, a lot of people that we speak to, it's like, hey, it's about the messaging, that's the struggle, right?
Yes.
And to you, right, what you're saying is it is about understanding your audience.
Yeah. If I'm talking to my grandmother, I use this kind of language. If I'm talking to my friend, I use this kind of language. It's like a click in your brain for what words to use, right? When it's appropriate. And B2B has that struggle. They're trying to talk to a company, and that doesn't exist.
If you're trying to shake things up in the industry, and especially such a, newer industry as tech, it's very fast moving, and everyone does tend to meld in together with that very, modern sort of look. Then it comes down to the language that's used and how you sound, the voice associated to the business. And I see that on your profile. Do you bring that into the business as well?
We don't have a quorum in terms of the profile of the businesses that we work with, right? They're so widespread. However, their programs, because we start with this detailed persona research, they do have their own tone and style guide associated with the automation, right? So it makes sense at the client level. However, for us, we're still like afraid to adopt one and make the others feel kind of left out. So I have not done that with the company as a whole. It's still very generic, right? However, for me, I know, where my loyalties lie. I like to have fun with this stuff. So
Hell yeah. That's why. I mean, a lot of the time it is bringing from the personal brand into the business. So say, for example, people know Gary Vee more than they know like Vaynerchuk Media. Same thing as like Richard Branson. Like uh, that in itself is also important, like who you are as like a founder or founders, right? What is the essence that you bring? Or if you're not going to show like your face, like, okay, are you gonna have like a mascot?
mm,
Or are you going to put in like build a voice into that company instead, right?
that is literally like a week away. I think we've decided on what that's going to be, and we're getting very serious. So you'll start to see the language change, right? And you'll start to know, okay, they're targeting, X. So no, it's built into the software that we're going to release in about 30 days, which is very interesting.
What's one of the most common mistakes that you're seeing out there in the B2B world? Like things that they're outdated and it's about time that they need to be either shaken up or, you know.
I was just on a webinar, a B2B webinar yesterday, and I swear to you, they sounded like they were reading from an AI prompt. Like every word was just like so, it's like the stuff that comes cookie cutter out of the box from ChatGPT. And I was just floored. I'm like, how are you getting away with this? It was just clear that, one, it made us feel good that, we're going in the direction that we're going, where we're going to focus on more.
Mm.
Yes, we serve B2B, but B2B is soon to become more B2C if you want reach, right? Platforms are just not going to give you the attention if you're talking like that. And then for them, it was clear that, there is some, like, they were trying to be more relevant, and they went with some cookie cutter out of the box ChatGPT prompt to help with their presentation. I was seconds away from going, oh, it's so interesting to see ChatGPT read out loud. But no, I was a little bit more respectful. I was like, okay, this person's probably, it was a pretty decent sized webinar. There's about 1,000 folks on there. But I think, um,
Oh,
yeah, no, I think it is something that, we're always going to pay attention to. We have to have guidelines and standards that help us push past this, and then be the pioneer that demonstrates what that looks like. So it's easier for like newer customers, and as we start to build a brand, for them to understand and adopt pretty easily. And then, I don't know, maybe a coaching program or two, or training program to help, show what that looks like internally. Who knows?
that's the thing that I see, in school, right? We get taught, oh, you need to get 1,000, 2,000 word
Mm,
essay. You need to use the most complex words for it to like mark well, for you to get good scores,
yeah.
right? So now it's unlearning all of that because, you look at so many businesses, be it like their about section, their manifesto, like etc. And it's built out so many like into more words than most people are willing to really read or go through,
Yeah.
right?
And it doesn't say anything.
And it doesn't say
And
anything. So I can just imagine for that presentation, right? It could have been maybe half of the time, right?
I ended up leaving, and I think it was just sort of this, for every 3 minutes there may have been a nugget, and that's kind of too long for our attention spans today. So yeah, definitely needs to change. We obviously need to, be demonstrating that more aggressively, because I still think it's not very clear for B2B companies on, how to do that. It's not even 100% clear for us on how to do that at scale. We're able to do that, but with heavy human input.
I know you talk about this a fair bit on your content, your profile, and with what you do, and it's building out your ideal profile, right, in the B2B world. Like, what is a common challenge there into building out like that ideal persona that you see?
I think the common challenge is where most B2B marketers start within an organization. So let's go back to that original process for a software company, right? You get this funding, right? They tend to have a ton of oversight and influence over most of the decisions made at the organization because you said you were going to spend your money a certain way. With their research, the research required for them to decide whether or not they're going to fund, they tend to think from a total addressable market standpoint, which is firmographic data, right? There are 1,000, automotive software companies in a 20-mile radius. This says nothing about the person, right? And then they only think in that term. Software industries suffer like this. And if you want your software business to grow, then you have to do this. And they just keep talking to the software business, whereas there's individuals inside of that business model, right, that have different goals, right, that are very different from what the company's goals are, right? And if you just think about, like, look at culture, right? Last 3 years, it's been a lot of quiet quitting, people starting their own thing, right? People are in it for themselves. Right. So if you come to the market with, hey, we're going to help your company, right? People are going to be like, but my company, I don't know if they're going to care about me as much as I care about me. So what's in it for me? So the challenge has always been take their mind from, okay, great, you have this macro market. That's awesome. But now we have to create programming for what's in it for this individual so that we can get as much buy-in as we can from the people who are making a decision on whether or not to use our product, right? That's a completely different conversation. And you kind of have to present yourself in the channels, in the medium that they consume the most, right? That 6 hours a day on these platforms, that's not B2B content about bottom lines and efficiencies, right? That's cat videos and something else. So you got to get in there, right? And, be able to deliver that message and be able to start generating influence at more stages of the funnel.
So it's about making their jobs easier rather than like, we're going to get you X number of revenue or this amount of profit.
When ChatGPT first came out, like, I had a full complement, on my team. I had, a dedicated writer. We had designers. We had, a couple of marketing agencies. ChatGPT came out, and I swear none of them wanted to touch it. Like, it was like the existential tool to them, right? And that's the reality for a lot of folks when software comes out, right? It just looks like a massive job killer. Why would I adopt this thing that's promising bottom lines and efficiencies when that bottom line might be me, right? If I really cared about the company's bottom lines and efficiencies, I'd say, just fire me and just use this tool, right?
Yeah.
So people don't adopt that. They see their existential threat in that kind of language where it's like, but are you talking about cutting me out? No, there's a place for you in the adoption of this tool.
How would you frame it though? So like, if they're going, well, this tool maybe later on, like 2 years down the track, once it's like properly implemented, might like reduce jobs, etc.
No. So the tool has to have them included in it, right? So I'll give you an example. And this kind of worked when I was in fintech and cybersecurity. We had entire sort of education programs that were focused on the practitioner, right? And once the practitioner felt like their career was being elevated, we sold this as a career elevation tool, right? We sold the entire education system as this is going to help you develop into who you want to be, right? You're here. This is where you want to be. This is the bridge to get you there, right? And once they saw the brand as like that bridge, it became a different story. Like, hey, I like you guys. Sure, I'll do a sales call. Sure, I'll engage in this additional webinar. Sure, I'll, ride this journey. And then here's the best part: when they would leave their current organization and go to the next, they would recommend us immediately, right? It's almost like you said we're helping their professional career. I'm saying more so be a part of their lifestyle journey. So you do have to think about lifestyle elements, right? Health, wealth, and relationships are the top three, right? Everyone cares about their health. Everyone cares about their wealth. Everyone cares about their relationships. If you position yourself within any one of those three categories, lifestyle wise, you're fine, right? But if you go, hey, we're just going to help this company that you work for today, it's very hard for them to adopt.
Building up that connection. That is so, like I see that missed so frequently that it's like, hey, this pain point, but is it really the actual pain point behind it all, right? Like, did you go deep enough? Like, is that what they're feeling on a day-to-day basis, or is this just like something that you see when you're pitching something like that very surface level?
What they're saying is they're annoyed with this particular feature, when in reality they're annoyed with that feature because on Friday they were supposed to get out of the office at 4:30, and then they left the office at 5:30 because they couldn't get past this feature, and they ended up missing their daughter's recital. Right? That's the pain point, right? Hey, you're never going to have to worry about missing a recital or wasting time on software again with this tool.
And that's what, brands that have lasted years, like Nike, etc., they've nailed onto, or they've hit that specific point. What are those real situations without going, buy from us. What's happening to you day to day, how this affects. And speaking of big brands like that, like, are you inspired by anyone or any brand who's been shaking things up?
Slack's one of my favorite. Why? Because the growth story is quite literally about being this brand attached to the individual. Like I started with Slack at an organization, and then when I left the organization, I only used Slack to communicate with like people that I knew or I met through Slack, or I had a professional relationship with, and I still use it today, right? And if you look at their messaging and the way they grew within network marketing, or what do you call it? Network effects, where they were like, hey, you just need a tool that allows you to communicate with another professional and then share like all kinds of apps and workflows and whatever you might be working with in a much more seamless way, right? We're just going to create that platform that allows you to do that allows you to be an effective professional amongst your relationships, right? So that's that third category, is health, wealth, or relationships. We're going to help you with your relationships, right? We're going to make it super easy for you to organize. And then we're going to API and integrate with every app out there, so it's easy for you to share and have conversations and manage your conversations. And then, if you want this to be even better, share this with somebody else and we'll give you credit for it. Like, super simple. They didn't have to do a bunch of traditional or digital marketing. They just said, we're just going to help you in your professional career. And it just expanded and grew, and it's massive now. HubSpot kind of went in that opposite direction, where they're just like, they started with something super basic. And then once they heard enough, interest or saw enough usage inside the product, so it was more product-led growth for marketers on the platform, they just started to add those components slowly over time until it became, sort of this behemoth. But that mentality of like, we're just going to focus 100% on one person's career and just build it out. Then they moved into the sales component because they realized marketers need to have a great relationships with their sales teams, right? And then they moved into customer success components because they're like, marketers need to have great relationships with their entire life cycle. So let's build out something that supports this marketer. So it just became a no-brainer, and they built an education platform on top of that allowed marketers to develop and learn new skills and become better at their jobs and feel like they were empowered in the platform. Yeah, that's how it's done, and yeah, I'm very inspired by that.
So between the two, it's basically, okay, keep things simple, don't overcomplicate things, and focus on one like very deep, like individual day-to-day kind of like person. And only when you've got that nailed out, then you can like try to focus on other people, right? So, all right, there is one question that I ask everyone that comes on, and that is, what is the biggest societal norm that you want to push back on and teach others about?
So when I was leaving the cybersecurity company, I was asked, why are you not going back into cybersecurity? And it was just so shocking for everybody. And I remember like my interviews from the past, right? Where they would be like, have you done this industry's marketing before? And if you haven't, right, their mind just can't like snap to the fact that that might be a plus, right? They just go, no, we're looking for someone who's done this specifically at this type of company, period. And we just don't want anybody else, right? And that just does not allow for your industry to grow. It does not allow for you guys to innovate and adopt new ideas. You're just stuck using the same old stuff, right? That is not going to allow you to grow or be different in any way. So I think recruiters have a responsibility to change some of their practices there, where they do need to be more open-minded, because I talk to professionals a lot now and they're just like, they're not hiring in this specific industry. And you're like, why not try another industry? And they're just like, oh, well, they don't, I'm like, that's silly. Like you could change, quite literally everything about that industry if you bring in just one new idea. So I don't know. That's one thing that I would say, please change today.
My God, like I could not be in any more agreement with that. There's just so like the chance to be able to position differently is just in that. My God, powerful. Love it. And well, thank you so much for coming on, mate. You can connect with James through the deets in the podcast show notes. If you love the episode, a great way to support is by popping in a 5-star review. And thanks for listening to the Art of Branding podcast. Want to get in on the badassery? Visit badassarybybee.com to get started. Freaking you.
Had a really good time. I really did. This is a really fun conversation. Again, send me the notes because I know there's going to be some nuggets.
Time for bloopers. Yay!
I'm going to hit record. Okay, let's step that back.
Oh, yeah?
I don't want to look at me because it's too distracting.
Yeah. Well, good to see you.
We got to look at the camera, but then we got to look at the other person because it's like,
I don't know. My interface it kind of has you stacked, so you can't tell if I'm looking at you or me, which is like perfect for me.
Oh yeah, no, well played,
yeah.
Well played.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
Can you move like your, I don't know, like laptop or something down so you're like less like near the
less
like it looks like you're like a little kid. No, that's too hard.
There you go.
Okay, cool. Otherwise it looks like you're like
climb like
a kid going like.
I think I can move. Hold on, let me move my chair up. That's probably easier. How about that?
You're frozen
there
now.
You go.
Oh wait. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Now I look like the little kid.
Yeah. Fix your stuff there.
Just fix me.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'll hide me.
Yeah.
But
So I owe you a huge thanks, by the way. So it's a funny story. So after our last
what did I do?
You and your little AI bot together as a team, very effective. So after our little chat, I think it sent over, they do the meeting summaries and they kind of just summarize everything that was said. It was just the way it compiled the conversation that gave me so much clarity on our initial problem, which was choose your freaking audience. Did I choose an audience yet? No, I did not. But I had so much clarity after that conversation because of the notes. I was like, oh man, this is brilliant. Like, now I understand. So
Freaking chef's
I
kiss.
do owe you a thanks. I shared it with my team and they were like, oh man, this is great. We knew we wanted to go in this direction, but just having it said out loud and then synthesized
Have AI.
by a robot, right? That's just like, shut up. Here's your one liner. Do this.
So
Get to
it's
work.
basically us talking about it,
Yeah.
getting to deets of it, and
Yeah.
then AI going, look, bitch, this is what you
Yeah.
need to do.
They're like, this could have been an email and it looks like this.
Fathom should just start with like, this could have been an email and it would have been one line.
But yeah, thank you.
No
We have a
worries.
lot of clarity and we're like extra excited about our mission now.
Hell yeah. No, I'm looking forward to seeing the updates. And yeah, so basically we're going to be like around 30 minutes
Okay.
and banter style, as I think I mentioned before. And if you're ready, we can start.
I'm
Yeah?
ready. Yeah.
Hail the freak, yeah. Okay.